of course, I see that big smile over there. Kira, congrats on passing your PMP exam. I'm sure you've had enough of, doing questions, answering, and be done with these Tuesdays evening, aren't you?
Oh man, I mind my Tuesday nights back.
I know that feeling. I'm sure it felt like it was never ending, and when can I have a normal life back, talk to your family, or at least have normal dinner times, right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, again, congrats again on passing your PMP exam. How was your remote testing experience? Was that as bad as some of the people may say, or you've had any interesting stories to share?
So it actually went smoothly. At the end, it kind of was having some technical difficulties, but I had already submitted it and just wanted to see it, But it actually went through just fine. No problems.
Not bad, right? Not bad at
Yeah.
all. Too bad Joe's not here, but next time Joe jumps on, if he can find an earlier exam date, I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear that. It's like any other, testing, right? Really want Joe to take his exam sooner. But yes, Kira, go ahead. How was your day like? What was the issues? Any surprises?
So pretty smooth day. I unplugged from all the PMP stuff the night before, as suggested, and just kind of I took it in the afternoon, so by the afternoon I was a little high on the anxiety side, so I probably wish I had taken it a little sooner in the day. The test, actually, there was no surprises. Questions were pretty simple. Felt like they were actually easier than the practice questions. I think they really prepared me for them.
That's good to know.
Only had a couple drag and drops and one CPI question.
Okay.
I didn't have to calculate it. It gave me, and you were supposed to interpret it.
Right.
Which was nice because.
Why would you say you're not as comfortable with EVM, or you prefer not to deal with the calculation if you were given one?
I actually was comfortable with them, but just got tired. I was kind of glad not to have to deal with it. Just because with my dyslexia, numbers aren't my friend.
Yeah, all the time, no. So. I hear that. So I'm glad to hear that. A lot of people do ask, what are the EVM questions like? I think we've heard enough already. It's really interpretation. And, the good thing to hear from a lot of these victory laps is that there's no surprises, right? Like you do feel like going in prepared and knowing what to expect. Nothing out of the blue, nothing that's going to throw you off in the left field, which is great to hear.
I'd say it was probably 60%, like you had said, like 60-ish% agile, a little bit of hybrid and a little bit of waterfall. And then some that it wasn't really that easy to tell what they were. But you could still knew.
Great. And I know you were really good with, agile related questions. Any particular issues or I guess there's no surprises, but when it comes to agile questions, did you felt like, the content that you were provided with was sufficient to go through those agile questions? And was there like a theme towards those agile questions? I mean, we all know they're situational, but was there like a specific theme?
They all seem to be conflict themes. So like so-and-so's having a conflict with so-and-so, or stakeholders are fighting. How would you address it? Or the product owner doesn't like how your team's acting for this reason. How would you address it?
Great.
And so actually a few of the questions like, this looks like the interview question I just had yesterday. Because I actually interviewed for a assistant manager / project manager the day before. And it's like, that looks familiar.
Oh, wow. You had an interview the day before your PMP exam.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think studying for the PMP really helped to do well in that interview. So it has multiple applications, which is nice.
Great. Yeah. And I do have to agree. Like a lot of the from what I recall, like myself included and a lot of the students before us, the questions do cater around like team dynamic, right? Like issues within the team, or like you as a PM dealing with a conflict or dealing with a problem that involved another person or a group, not necessarily the work you're doing, more like not budget schedule related question. I do find a lot of like interpersonal kind of problems or conflicts in these questions. So I think that's why it goes back to like the whole conflict resolution, dealing with different personalities, but also, the team development, right? Like the Techman ladder is very important as well. Great.
There was a couple questions related to servant leadership specifically too.
Oh,
so
yes.
They really wanted to make sure you had a good grasp of that, we'll just say.
You had any issues getting down to the 50-50?
No, most of them, I got down to just one answer.
Okay, very good.
Had a couple I did 50-50 on, but most of them, it was pretty clear what answer was the right one.
Did you take your breaks? Did you flag any questions? Any trouble with managing time?
I actually got down to 37 minutes left, even after taking the breaks.
Pretty good.
And so I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. So I went back and I reviewed the last section. I'm like, okay, I guess it is right. And so I actually, that is the biggest thing, is I went back and reviewed every single question, make sure that my 50-50 or no 50-50 made sense. But I really did appreciate the breaks, because by the time I got to the 60 questions, it's like, I need a break now. So I do definitely recommend taking those.
Yes, highly recommend. Does help out with, working the eyes, or, definitely taking a break from all that focusing. My final question before I kind of open it up to the group, and, whether or not you just got, what is the one advice that you would give to the group here tonight, for those that's going in, and for those that, really pushing hard to get to an exam date and just get it over with?
I really recommend trusting the process, because I kind of was a little skeptical, I'll admit, going in. And it worked. I ended up getting all 3 above targets.
Nice.
And so my biggest suggestion is, when you study, engage as many senses as you can, so you learn the material on a deeper level. So you'll see me always drinking tea, but finding different ways to kind of engage more of your hearing, your reading. So when you're hearing or you're reading, or your taste, because it's been shown that actually helps you to learn material better and recall it better in the long run. And so I always have done that. And I think it really helped to learn the material on a better too.
That is very interesting. That explains why I had those late night snacks, when I was doing my PMP.
Hey, those come in handy.
I know, I agree. Sorry, you were meant to say, Kira?
Oh, I was just saying, just whenever you're looking at the questions, try and visualize the situation and putting yourself in it. Just like the step-by-step instructions say, see what you would do in the situation, because that kind of helps too to narrow down some of the questions.
You ever came across a moment where you just felt like you're taking 5 steps back and you're not progressing well? You ever came across moments like that?
I did. So before I switched to your accountability call, and I was kind of felt like I was like shooting into the empty space, and it's like I just felt like I kept putting stuff onto the evaporative data dump that I'd already taken off, and I just got so super frustrated with it. And so these calls really helped too to deal with that. But I did feel like several times like I'd taken 5 steps back for every step forward.
How did you manage that? Like, I mean, aside from the coaching call, we only chat once a week, but on your own, those late nights, how did you manage those feelings, or how do you manage to keep pushing forward, right? Like, I think a few of us here, and even in my other class, students do feel that, right? Like, I just want to get it done. You know, I can only read so much. I can only do so many questions.
Usually for me, it was taking a step away. Like, just, I found that when I started getting all the questions wrong in a row, that I really just needed to take a step back and take a break, come back to it. And like after about 20 minutes, I usually was fine. But when I hit those roadblocks, I just had to keep going back to my why. It's like, why am I really doing this? And I really had to have a strong why.
Yep.
And practicing mindfulness, just being aware of where you're, when you're starting to have those issues, being aware of them so that you can kind of nip it in the butt and know, and kind of just get yourself back on track, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you mean. I think that strong why, that, strong will of, pushing forward and why am I doing this, right? It does help. I think, we're all so deep into the study materials and repeating, doing the same thing over and over again. And, we may see not much progress, or, we're kind of more like walking backwards. So it does help to be reminded of practicing those things. No, this is great. Thank you. Let me open it up to the group. Any specific questions for Kira and her remote testing experience?
Congratulations, Kira.
Oh, thanks.
I had a couple questions, kind of. One is about what questions you were seeing. Did you see, like, I'm struggling with my known unknowns, right? So like the different types of agile processes, right? I know I'm not really strong on those things, but I also know I don't need to spend a ton of time learning those things. Was there any of that, like in Crystal, or I was just looking at the extreme programming, anything like that? You run into any of those on there?
So actually they weren't. Probably couldn't hurt to at least know what they are, but they didn't really appear on there. It was more situations that you would come across in Agile, how to approach it from an Agile perspective. But for the most part, there wasn't any like nitpicky specific ones related to the different Agile processes, which was appreciated.
Right. And then the other one was just kind of general functions of how the test works, right? So you get the breaks. Is that after a set amount of time, after a set number of questions? How does that work?
It's after 60 questions.
Okay.
So however long it takes you to do those 60 questions, that's what's important. And I'll admit that timer was a little unnerving, because it's like counting down, and I had to really think about, when it's counting down, kind of roughly how much time I had for each question, which I think is covered in one of the videos. And it helps me to kind of gauge how far along I was, but at times it was a little unnerving. So it ends up being probably, for me, it ended up being close to about an hour, right around an hour. We had it for each break, hour 15.
Okay.
But my biggest thing is don't get distracted by that timer. It's there, but it can be distracting. But yeah, after about 60 questions.
So it's just one big chunk of time they give you that's counting down. It's not like, here's an hour, here's another hour, something, nothing like that. Okay.
That's right. And I remember the first time when I did my exam, I was so distracted by the timer. I'd keep on like, okay, I got like how many questions left, and then I tried to like divide the time per the number of question. Just know it's there, but take a look at your time from time to time. As long as you're mindful, you're not spending too much time on each question, you're fine. Kira's right on. It's about an hour 15-ish per section. That should really give you comfortable time to finish all 3 sections, and it's every 60th question you'll get a break.
Okay.
And definitely take those 10-minute breaks.
Highly agree. Great. Any additional questions?
Just one more from me.
Of course, go ahead, Ben.
So you made it sound like, and then last week and in our hard questions made easy call, I can't remember her name, but it sounds like what was really kind of the theme, the word Bonita used was more of like the roles, right? The roles in conflict resolution instead of the specific details of Agile or waterfall, things like that. It's more of the relationship stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, it was definitely more of the relationship stuff.
Okay.
I felt like it was more that you had to kind of know what some of the ways you would address those issues and know kind of how risk and issues relate to those things. But it was more primarily the roles and conflict resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like, stakeholders upset that, the schedule is behind, what would you do in this case? Obviously engage your stakeholders, but at the same time, what are some of the ways to kind of chase back on those times? But I from what I recall, is a heavy focus on those relationships. Yeah, the dynamics, the interactions, how you're going to do to manage those relationships. That's why you hear me say it from time to time. Don't focus too much on the ITTOs. Doesn't quite help you with the type of questions you'll see.
Yeah,
I have a question.
Agreed. Oh, go ahead.
If I may ask this question, is preparing for the test. I noticed last week when we were on the call, when you were reading your question, it was like it was so simple for you to actually do the process of elimination and get to the 50%. And then when you got to the 50%, it was so easy for you to choose the correct answer. I'm wondering if I will ever get to that, if I'm going to ever be able to do that, because I think I doubt myself a lot, and that brings about fear. So
I completely can understand. I started that way myself. What really saved me is really focusing on Scott's method for solving the questions, because after a while you start to understand how they come up with their wording, and it's kind of easier to read through the red tape. And also, those simulators in the knowledge areas were really helpful. Like when I started, most of the stuff was about 60%, but I kept doing really bad on monitoring and controlling and executing. And I'm like, am I ever going to get there? And I did. I really did. I have that PM1 view he has really helps you to, and the 7 key flows video really helps try and figure out how the process and the relationships of the different scenarios. So definitely recommend that for kind of getting to that point. But definitely though, his process of elimination and process of answering the questions was what I think ended up getting me there.
Okay.
But I promise you'll get there.
I promise to, Jessica. I think we've all been there, and for you coming from reading the PMBOK and doing the boot camp, right? It's really difficult to really forget what you've read, what you've learned, and start brand new, right? Like a brand new approach to taking in the concepts and just doing it slightly different from how you were used to. But we will all eventually get there. I do agree. Those hard questions made easy technique do kind of help you realign yourself and really focusing on what matters in the question, and really getting down to the 50-50 and then finally the correct answer, right? So we will definitely work through that.
Okay.
Just don't miss the calls if you can help it.
As much as I like to see you all, obviously I don't want you all to hang around too long. That's usually how I like to see it. Great. Any additional questions for Kira? If not, great. Yes, a big congrats. It's been wonderful working with you and having you on these calls. anyway, I've gonna share some information with you on the PDUs. You've probably heard it in past calls. Of course, start collecting your PDUs. There's a bunch of resources I'll send you in terms of where you can look for them. And you got 3 years to make sure you get those 60 credits before the expiration comes up. Other than that, I've shoot Scott a message as well, so we'll connect, and then we'll keep in touch. You got my email. Anytime you got any questions, feel free to reach out as well.
And thank you so much for everything. You've been amazing.
It's been fun. It's been a pleasure working with every single one of you, really.
I'll miss your calls, I'll admit.
Oh,
Won't
yes.
miss having to study, but I will miss your calls.
Definitely.
Thank
It's
you,
always
guys.
nice catching up.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Kira.
And you guys got this.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You got it.
Thank
Just
you.
trust the process. I promise. It was great to see y'all.
Amazing.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.